Welcome to Search Talk Live with search engine optimization and marketing expert Robert O'Haver, powered by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Search Talk Live. I'm your host, Robert O'Haver. And those of you tuning in for the first time, we are a digital marketing podcast. We talk about everything to do with digital marketing. I mean, it could be social media, content marketing, SEO. We do a lot of SEO stuff, conversion optimization. I mean, you name it, we pretty much cover it. We have a flavor for everybody. We try to anyway. We try to keep everything white hat. We don't do anything, talk anything that's going to possibly get you in a penalty or on the dark side, so to speak. If you could, you can go to searchtalklive.com to listen to previous episodes of the show, or you can go to Spreaker. We send everybody there. You can also sign up for our newsletter. You can get the newest information on who's going to be on the show if you sign up for that. And those of you tuned in last week, I talked a little bit about, Caleb had left and he's no longer with the show. And I'm looking for some a new co-host for the show. So I got an overwhelming response from it. And quite a few people emailed me and was interested in being the co-host of the show. So what I've decided to do, because a lot of them are friends of mine that are in the industry, I don't want to pick amongst my friends. So what I'm doing is each week I'm going to have another a guest co-host, so to speak, on. And after 4 weeks, I'm going to pick 4 people. I'm going to do a Twitter poll and let you vote as the listener who you think is the best. So that way I don't have to pick amongst my friends. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, but first I want to introduce our guest co-host. She has been in the industry for a very long time, is very knowledgeable, and that's one of the things I need on this show, is somebody that can hang with all the conversations. There's not too many people can do that, but this girl, Michelle Stinson Ross, is on the show with me. Welcome.
Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. I have to admit, I kind of like, hey, me, I want to go. So apparently that worked, and I get to be the first one in the hot seat. So.
And I've done quite a few hangouts with you, and I've been in a couple of sessions, when John Mueller was doing stuff, and just thought you were just a great fit. And when our guest actually said, "Hey, this person's perfect," I was like, "Oh my God, yes!" So
thank you, Keith Goode.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. People that haven't heard about you and what you do and how long you've done it. Let's hear it.
I am the Vice President of Marketing and Sales at the Gruen Agency. We are a digital marketing agency based in Minneapolis. I happen to live in Austin, Texas, so I'm kind of special when it comes to that sort of thing. Nice. I have been in digital marketing ever since around about 2010. I started out specializing in social media marketing and content. I actually came into marketing as a writer, so I really appreciate the communication and audience side of marketing. And since then, I have continued to kind of get my hands into all of the dirt and things of the rest of digital marketing, and I am technically a marketing generalist.
Very good. So, and here you are.
Here I am. I'm game to talk about just about anything, and I think we're going to be talking about enterprise SEO.
Yes, we are. And our guest today on the show is not only a fan of the show, but he is a evangelist when it comes to digital marketing. Keith Goode of IBM. He is going to talk with us today about large enterprise in-house SEO. Keith, how's it going?
Oh, it's fantastic. How are you?
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, and you're welcome, Michelle. Glad to give you a boost there to get you on the show. So glad you're joining us today. And she can wrangle me into, staying on track and not shifting off course.
Perfect.
That's always good.
Of course, there's probably a beer tally that goes along with that, but oh well.
Oh.
Wah, wah.
So let's dive into it. Now, there's a lot, there's people that do SEO, and then there's people that do enterprise SEO. And I'd have to argue that they are not the same.
I would agree with that argument. I would say that they are essentially the same, but it's the same in a way that a bonobo is similar to a chimpanzee. I mean, they're they are a little different, even though they both look like monkeys. Yeah. So, those are apes. I'm completely showing that I almost failed biology in high school. But yeah, so enterprise SEO is quite different, and in fact, it gets even more different. It gets, I don't want to say bizarre, but it gets much different the larger the enterprise that you're working in. And I've actually worked with companies that are fairly new startups that are just brand new, just coming out of the capital factory, all the way up to large enterprise organizations like IBM, like Dell, where you're dealing with millions and tens of millions of pages, as well as tens of millions of user visits on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So the stakes get higher. The SEO gets a lot more complicated, and I am somewhat envious of folks who are optimizing small sites sometimes, to be honest.
I bet. Well, let me ask you. I mean, working with a large corporation. And we all know SEO takes a long time, or takes some time. When you're working with a corporation, doesn't it even take longer because you have to go through all these hurdles and approval processes before you can move forward with a project or strategy?
Yeah, to a degree, and it actually depends on the level of enlightenment of the overall organization as it relates to SEO, and also priority. If right. The overall organization is seeing an organic drop, and they realize how important SEO is to fixing the organic traffic drop, they will put as much priority and emphasis on SEO as they can. So, you say in an organization like that, you say, hey, we need to update these tags, or we need to add these tags, or we need to modify this information architecture. You're going to get it done a lot faster than you would under ordinary circumstances, where I'm employee number 298,000 out of 300,000 employees, and my priorities are just they're in a queue. Right. So that's one of the challenges that I've seen, just based on executive priority. Mm-hmm. This is why oftentimes with SEO in an in-house capacity, it becomes a little political in that you have to get that executive buy-in. And then it becomes a matter of the priority is coming down rather than up. Right. And when you get in a priority down type of scenario, you can get as much done as you need to.
Very cool. And that's why they hired you, because they trust you.
Because I'm a politician. Yeah. I know who to schmooze, what kind of wine they like. I'm just kidding. I haven't bought. I will say, though, that I'm not an alcoholic. I think, Michelle, the beer tally and the wine comment may give that impression. I'm really not. But wait, isn't denial one of the first symptoms?
I was just going there, but I didn't.
I will say that I have gained a lot of value from figuring out a developer's favorite beer and walking over to them and giving them a 6-pack and going, "Hey, I have a priority item that needs a little fix. Can you work this into your schedule?" And then enterprise SEO, not only from a matter of priority, but it also becomes a matter of, okay, I've worked at sites where maybe there were 100 keywords that were the overall most important keywords, and then you go into an organization like a Dell where you've got perhaps tens of thousands of keywords that you're tracking on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And they are health check type of keywords where if we fail in that case, if we fail in 25% of these 10,000 keywords, there's a problem, and we need to go out and address it pretty quickly. And then you get into, how many organizations can you have in a single company? Well, a lot. Let me tell you that much. There's, not just the individual products and services that you're offering, but each of those products and services may have their own development team or their own product managers or project managers. So it does get a little bit more complicated. And I do find that some of my weeks are less about SEO and more about attending meetings. So,
meetings about the meeting from last week. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, exactly.
So what, I just can't fathom this because I haven't had this experience, but, I've always either been hands-on or worked really close with a dev team or whatever when changes needed to be made. How is that? What is that like in an atmosphere like IBM where, you really have to stay on those people, right, to get those changes made, or?
Not necessarily, and I can't speak specifically to my experience at IBM because I as I will say in all of my conference presentations, as I said when I was with Dell, Keith is not IBM. Keith does not speak for IBM, and Keith is not Dell, nor does he speak for Dell. Okay. So I come at you speaking as an enterprise SEO in general.
Yes.
But again, it comes back to some of the methodologies that are in place. Now, I've worked at companies where your project in particular may have fallen into a what's known as a waterfall development cycle. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know much about waterfall,
sure,
but it's an annual cycle. So what ended up happening is you go through the process sometime about maybe June or July of starting to build your political power behind whatever project you're trying to push for the development team. It goes through an executive panel and they approve it or they disapprove it. If it gets approval, then you start building out the actual plan. And then sometime about July of the next year, your product is finally released, and it may or may not be right. And then if it's wrong, you've got to go back through the whole process again. So it's not a very efficient. Believe me, it's not a very efficient process. Now, most companies nowadays are moving toward an agile type of development cycle, and that makes it a lot easier because you can start building out your overall user stories and talk about iteration and how can we build out what is known as a minimally marketable product.
Yeah.
Something that we can push out now and then we can refine and perfect later on. And I actually prefer working in that type of environment because the agile teams tend to be smaller than these overall waterfall teams. And you have line of sight to the actual completion of the project. So whether it's adding a tag to the site, whether it's taking a tag off, like for example, now we get to take off not only no YDIR, but also no ODP, the tags on site, so we can save some bytes and that we don't have to load anymore now that we've gotten rid of DMOZ and Yahoo directory. So those are those types of changes would have taken forever before. Now it could be 2 weeks.
And Tag Manager helps too. No.
That's true. If you're using something like that, I will say that in an enterprise SEO environment, oftentimes you may run into standards and practices, and oftentimes very large organizations have a group within that organization who are responsible for saying, we will allow these types of tags and these types of additions to pages, but we won't allow these types. And if you want a new one added, we have to evaluate it and determine if it's going to damage the overall experience. And so that adds another layer of complexity to getting something released in a large enterprise.
Yeah.
Hey, Keith, you mentioned, what would seem like a slight change in adding or removing a tag, but with enterprise, the scale of the number of pages, that is not actually a simple chore, is it?
The scale of it, understanding the scale of it, sometimes even understanding every page that's there because of this thing called orphan pages, where you have a page that has nothing linking to it, but it's still a priority. It's the understanding the scale of pages for a very, very large site can be difficult sometimes, and it's not as easy as running Screaming Frog or something like that to find all of those. You have to get into the conversations with your stakeholders, the folks that are the release managers for these things, and going, what is a priority for you? And we'll focus on those. Add to that, you get into parameterizations of pages and maybe canonicals that are broken and not fixing those parameterizations. Mm-hmm. It can get unwieldy, and it takes some fine tuning, and sometimes that's actually quite a manual process. So fortunately, I have a very good relationship with the stakeholders I work with now. I've had a very good relationship with the stakeholders I worked in the past with, and I just sit down with them and I say, hey, what's a priority for you? You cannot. I don't believe. Some people may disagree with me, but I don't believe you can make, let's say, every page on a 100,000 page site a priority. You have to figure out what are the highest priority items based on the user need, the person who's coming to your site and trying to complete a transaction, but also the business unit. They set these standards for us, and oftentimes, if you're in an enlightened corporation, they have gone through the process of building out those personas and determining who is actually coming to their site, where they are in the buyer cycle when they're using these specific keywords. So I always say don't focus on keywords, focus on topics, and then take a look at the keywords in relation to the buyer journey. Is the person using this long tail phrase in the process of actually completing a transaction, or are they doing research at this point? So yeah, it can get unwieldy, Michelle, for sure.
How much of a role does educating both, your lateral team as well as, for lack of a better term, leading up with education? How does that make this process any better?
Oh, it helps tremendously. I can say definitively the most successful thing that I've been able to implement at any company that I've worked at is an education system where we educate people about SEO as it relates to their particular jobs or their particular discipline. And that way they understand going forward, if I want to make this type of change to the site, I need to understand its impact in relation to SEO. So, back at Dell, we had a thing called Dell University. And in Dell University, you could become search certified. And you could focus on content. You could focus on technical. It didn't get really granular. But what I found happened after that particular program was put in place, people would contact me and go, hey, we're thinking about beginning a project soon. And we'd like to get you in at the front end and see what the potential issues might be. That's beautiful. That's like the perfect scenario, because otherwise what I'm running into are businesses coming to me going, hey, we created all this content. Can you SEO it?
Wait, let me wave my hand over it real quick.
Yes. Let me grab this bag of pixie dust. It will be right over at your desk. Where's the server?
Yeah.
Did you turn it off and back on again?
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Oh, this is great. All right, so if you have an in-house, or in-house team, I mean, do you necessarily need an agency for any help or anything?
Oh, well, that's a fantastic question. I actually wrote a piece about that back when I was at SEOClarity. So the last time I was on your show, I was the Chief SEO Evangelist for SEOClarity. Mm-hmm. And since then I've moved over. And one of the last, well, it wasn't one of the last ones. It was back in April of last year. I wrote an article called SEO Agencies, Friend or Foe of SEOs. And honestly, I can say when I first started running into agencies trying to gain business from the corporations I was working for, I was a little offended, because a lot of the things that they would do is they would come in and they would say, well, you need to change this. This is really important. And it was the very thing I had been talking about for 6 months up. And suddenly this executive listens to this agency and they don't listen to me. And I'm like, wait a second. I've been saying that for 6 months, and now it's a priority because this agency stepped in and said we need to take care of it. Yeah. So, what I had to come to peace and grips with was that, an agency can act as social proof for things that need to happen in your organization but have not been able to get priority on. One of the things that we found is that executives, if they hear from employee, number 25,378 out of their, 100,000 employees, that something needs to change. Well, okay, we'll look into it. But if an external organization can see that as well, they begin to realize that their competitors can see that too. Yeah. So it becomes a priority. So I actually think agencies play a very important role as it relates to in-house SEO as well. So you've got social proof that they offer. Agencies also can come in and fill in for some of the, I hate to call it this, but grunt work. Sometimes, you would need an agency to do something as simple as go through and check all the sitemaps and make sure the sitemaps are populating properly. And it's a really long manual process to go page by page and go, all right, is this the right page? No, take it out. So the grunt work is certainly something agencies can take care of as well.
Yeah.
But also additional perspectives, because we're all blinded to what we see. We can see it, but we may not see other perspectives that other people can see. And so having an agency come in and go, have you thought about this, can really help broaden the perspective that an in-house SEO might have.
Yeah, it's a second pair of eyes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we got to take a break. I'm sorry. We got to take a break real quick. Also, remember, Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies. You can visit robertpalmercompanies.com. There you can see the different companies that are available there. If you need a new mortgage on your home, or you need a new mortgage, period, for your house, go to rpfunding.com. That's one of the Robert Palmer companies. You can get a great deal there. If you're refinancing, you don't have to pay any closing costs, which is pretty awesome. I got to re-record that. That was terrible. But anyway.
So can RP funding help pay off my mortgage? That's what I want to know. They need to just pay it for me.
They have reverse mortgage, but I think you have to be 64 or something.
So long.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Awesome.
All right. What were you saying, Michelle? I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
I was kind of about to throw my hat into this conversation a little bit, because as an agency, one of the things that I find working with in-house teams, whether they're small teams or large teams, it really doesn't matter, at least as far as the size of the business. We usually are able to provide some additional expertise that might not, for whatever reason, be in existence in-house. And I found, at least for us, one of the best things we can do to serve an in-house team is to work together and kind of expand their available skill set and do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly something else that's really important. One of the things that I've seen in the past is, an SEO team, we're all about work and getting stuff done, and slogging through a million meetings. And one of the things we may not always have time to do is build out a consistent reporting template, for example, that we can then hand over to the executives, and have a consistent approach that we have with our stakeholders and inside the organization to get information out. So agencies actually are quite brilliant at this. They have beautiful reports. They have beautiful little, PowerPoint templates that they put together, and it's great to have an agency come in and provide even that level of expertise as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are talking with Keith Goode of IBM. If you have your questions, you can go on Twitter and do #SearchTalkLive, and we will answer your questions. I think Michelle is monitoring that live right now.
I am.
Yep.
I am.
I see a question here from Jesse McDonald over at Geek Powered, a local here in Austin. What is one piece of advice you think SMB-focused SEOs can learn from corporate-level SEOs? I don't know if it relates to SEO in general, but I would say that one of the things that I can encourage folks to do is learn how corporate SEOs are able to manage their time. Time management is so important to all levels of success. And what you will find is that in a corporate level SEO, especially for an SEO that's in a very large organization, their time is absolutely covered over in things like meetings, but then also you got to consider about 20% of their time at the very beginning of the year or toward the end of the year is dealing with compliance and legal training. Every large organization has this type of training for their employees, where they go through and they talk about how to comply with ethics laws and how to not run afoul of ethics laws related to the corporation, but then also IT security and those types of things. And so it behooves anyone who is an in-house SEO to get really good at planning out your schedule. I use a bullet journal every day to organize my time and take advantage of those small windows of opportunity to actually be productive.
Nice. So there are only smaller opportunities you're productive? No, I'm just kidding.
There have been some weeks where I'm like, did I do anything to earn my pay this week besides the 10 meetings?
Right.
There have been some weeks like that. But, honestly, that's one of my biggest priorities when I come in and I work for anybody, whether it's, been a small company or a large company. My goal is to earn my pay. I don't want to be someone who comes in and says, well, I've got a corporate job. I can kick my feet back and, really sort of enjoy this, having these great benefits. I want to make sure that I understand how much I'm being paid, plus the 30 or 40% for benefits to keep me there, and then pay for myself at least 10 times over, if not more. I've actually heard the number should be closer to 30 times is what should, an SEO should be aiming for.
Great. Do you have a question?
So,
sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say, how do you actually report on that?
There's
what
an
does
understanding.
that report look like?
Yes, sometimes it's a little bit of a soft metrics, as I like to call them, where you have a general sense of what your overall conversion rates are and what your revenue per visit might be, and you figure, all right, even if it's just going to a blog post and bouncing off, I can say that I get a certain amount of traffic. A certain amount of that traffic can actually converts, and here's the average order value for those conversions. So it's a little soft, and it's more about sort of just sensing that you're on the right path than actually knowing you're on the right path. It's very new agey, my approach.
So I mean, you basically on an enterprise level, you're going after the low hanging fruit first, so to speak, right?
That's certainly an approach that we like to take, especially when when I'm first starting with a stakeholder. I like to look for opportunities they're missing out on right now. Opportunities to move from page 2 to page 1.
Sure.
In the rankings, opportunities to increase click-through rates, or conversion rates on the page. I'm very much attuned to that, but I'm also all about the long game as well, which is why I have a huge emphasis on training, because it's likely that I'll be in a large organization where not every business unit has coverage from SEO. So as an organization overall, everyone should understand the impact that they can have by making sure that they're keeping their titles within a specific parameter, or including keywords in the content, or going out to a site like Answer the Public or Quora and seeing what questions are actually being asked around these keywords and writing content that's relevant to those keywords.
Sure.
So I'm all about the long game as well. So education is part of that long game. Another part of that long game is to truly understand not only your users, but that user's buyer's journey. So what are your personas? Who is coming to your site? Where are they in the purchase cycle related to the keywords they're using? What do they need at that very moment, and how can you provide it? So the long game is just as important, I think. In fact, more so important, because I ultimately feel like I'm a fairly lazy person. So if I can do a lot of upfront work, in order to rest in the long term, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So sense. Yeah. It's the what was the ant versus the squirrel, I think, or no, the cricket. Ants versus the cricket. Yeah, the old children's story about the ants that save up for winter and the cricket's just out sort of messing around until winter hits and suddenly he's starving and dying. But anyway, morbid. Okay.
All right, so let's pivot then. I have a question. So you've brought up buyer personas and that sort of stuff several times. You've also mentioned the individual business units within the larger organization. Are there times when it's appropriate to look at those individual business units and more particularly their specialized personas as kind of their own little thing and start to look at these as groups of smaller businesses where you can kind of bring that scale back down to something that's a little more human-sized?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think of in-house SEO teams as internal agencies, essentially servicing these various business units, which could be considered our clients, even though we're all paid from the same, paychecks or ADP or whoever, is paying the checks out of the corporate pot. But yeah, you really have to break it down each individual BU into their individual types of personas and those individual buyer journeys. And sometimes you have to correct them. And sometimes they may be saying, hey, no, we want to go after the CMO. And we have to correct them and go, is the CMO the guy doing the research? Is the CMO the guy with the pain point that requires a product to fix whatever the problem is? In most cases, I would say that, especially for large purchases, you're not really dealing with the CMO so much as you're dealing with the underling that, can't get his job done effectively without your product. And the CMO is going to be the guy that eventually signs the check. Sure. He's the guy that signs the procurement papers, but ultimately you've got to figure out which is the person that you need to appeal to, who will then go to his boss and go, I really need this. Yeah. This is really important for me.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. Now, when you said earlier in the show that you were, you're kind of given these parameters as far as, keywords and that type of thing when you came on board, like, their money products and stuff. But what portion of that in a large enterprise is actually competitive analysis for, what your competitors are doing versus what you're doing, and then merging those, into an argument or a meeting, so to speak,
Yeah. Honestly, I think that is one area that I think all SEOs should align behind, is that a part of your keyword research should be what are your competitors doing? Who are your competitors in the space? What are they doing well at? And how can you compete against them? Otherwise, you're basically not getting the full picture of the industry that you're in. So, competitive research definitely important to, because we, I use that Venn diagram where it's like, here are keywords that we're ranking for. Next to it are keywords that our competitors are ranking for. And when you only have one competitor lined up there, it's very difficult to say the areas that you don't overlap aren't just brand terms, which you'll never beat them on.
Right.
But if you add a third competitor in there and you see where the overlap is between those two competitors where you don't exist, then that's an area that I need to be focused on. So definitely look at more than one competitor as well.
Yeah. There's some great tools that do that. I mean, not to plug SpareFoot, but they have that great visual representation of, your competitors versus, what you're ranking for and they're not, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it's about share of voice. Yeah. It's not just about ranking. I think keywords and ranking are they're fairly fun. They're fundamental to SEO, but they're also elementary as well. And if you stop at just keywords and you stop at just ranking, and you don't look at overall share of voice, you run into a real problem there. Absolutely. Which is why I'm all about synergies between organic and paid, for example. Working together with the paid team to understand where are you spending all of your money, and where can maybe we do some focus here to drive our organic ranking up so that you're not having to spend as much money, for example.
Right. And going after those keywords that have the best ROI. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If you have a boss that comes into you and says, I just want more traffic, you understand you're dealing with someone who isn't quite fully enlightened as to what SEO is all about.
Right.
I can get you traffic, but you know what? If you don't want traffic coming into you about Ryan Gosling and then bouncing off immediately, let's talk about what real keywords you should be focused on, and then move on forward into figuring out what is my share of voice in my overall industry.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you kind of a strange question. So, like, since you're on the other side, you're in the enterprise level. What would your advice be? Not to obviously IBM's competition, but let's say you're an e-commerce site and you're trying to compete against the big box store like Amazon. What would your advice be for people like that?
Give up. I'm just kidding.
Close up.
So close up shop, fire all you people. No, Amazon is actually a pretty incredible company, and I think anybody who's been in SEO for a long period of time has kept an eye on Amazon and what they're doing in general, because they not only sort of dominate the SEO side of product searches, but you can do a search for most products and an Amazon link pops up in the SERPs.
Yeah.
But they are moving toward, and have been moving toward for a while now, a Google replacement model, where they don't just want you to go to Google and find them and then stay on their site. They want you to come to them first, bypassing Google and buying from them and staying with them. That's why I've got an Amazon Echo in my living room right now, where I can, I don't know, order Doritos or whatever. I don't actually order Doritos, but I could if I wanted to.
Okay.
And so, I would say anybody who's trying to compete with an Amazon needs to understand the investment required in order to be everywhere all the time for these people. Amazon shows up in paid. They showed up in organic. They are on Twitter. They are, they have phone apps, where you can go and actually look up a barcode on a product in the store, see if you can get it cheaper at Amazon. So these are things that you really have to keep in mind if you're trying to compete with someone like an Amazon, because the user is everywhere. You should be everywhere.
Right.
Make yourself convenient to them.
Okay, can I have a follow-up to this question? Because what do you do when it's Google that you're actually competing with? I know I'm seeing more and more from Google where they're providing the answer to a question, the solution to a problem right there in Google without you having to navigate away from Google. What do you do about that?
You embrace it. You try to become a part of it. Yeah. So actually, I think in our last conversation, in our last conversation, Robert, I think we actually talked a lot about the knowledge graph instant answers and how to take advantage of it as much as you possibly can. Yes, SEOs are quite irritated by the fact that Google wants to be the one-stop shop for answering your questions, and they basically take your content in order to do that. But I truly hate this phrase worse than anything, but it is what it is. And, Google is what it is and will probably continue to be that way until people stop using it. But for now, we know that the large portion of the world uses Google to find what they need. So, knowledge graph instant answers, make sure you are providing the best possible answer for any question that's out there. Again, I would say go to answerthepublic.com and see what questions are actually being asked. Possibly go to Quora and see what some of the better answers are, and figure out a way that you can answer that question 10 times better than anyone else does. And in addition to that, make sure you do the proper markup on your page to make your page appealing to that knowledge graph instant answer. I think Stone Temple Consulting has done some really good studies on knowledge graph instant answers and sort of some of the consistent things that they are seeing about sites that wind up in that box. But yeah, take advantage of the ecosystem. Don't fight it.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that Eric talked about that at Pubcon. It was pretty good information.
Well, now that Casey Marquis has finally decided to get off of his other phone calls and actually pay attention to us, he's asking all kinds of questions over on Twitter. So Keith, what the heck is this business about Ryan Gosling traffic? Are you talking about traffic that doesn't convert?
Yes, I am talking about traffic that doesn't convert. I understand there's a certain amount of acceptable bounce rate that a site can have. I don't want to boost that to unacceptable levels. And so, someone's not going to go to a Dell page and, look for Ryan Gosling, most likely. I think you have to be relevant. Don't just pursue traffic. You have to pursue relevant traffic, and you have to be relevant to the folks that are doing the searches. Otherwise, you're not going to do very well. Google's been very good about, in the past several years, sort of watching those user interactions with your sites and saying, oh, I see a 99% bounce rate on this guy. I'm going to, take him out of the top 10 results. So I'd like Ryan Gosling. He seems like a nice guy, and I think he's Canadian too, and they're very nice people. Very nice people.
But we're not going to be going, honestly, to look for information about Ryan Gosling on IBM's site. So why do that?
Why do that? Well, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's
that was an example. Yeah,
it's definitely an example. It's also an example of, folks that want to go after the head term that gets 60,000 people searching for it on a monthly basis that may or may not be directly related to the product. And this goes back to keywords. Is it an informational query that someone is running? Is it a transactional query that they're running? And again, all of that goes back to the buyer's journey. Informational queries, generally speaking, are not going to convert a lot. Folks are just looking for information. However, if you get into comparison type queries where someone is saying, how does the Amazon Echo compare to the Google Home, for example, that may be someone who is in the process of deciding whether they want to buy one or the other. Right. Don't go after these, 150,000 search volume keywords if it's not directly relevant to the page that you're trying to rank. And do the keyword mapping on your site. Go through the process of saying, all right, we understand that this head term is relevant to an entire category of pages, but then we need to break down these pages into specific focuses for these types of queries, and of course drive traffic to the deepest one possible that's most relevant, that can maybe more likely convert our users.
Yeah. So I have a question here. What is the single most effective thing you've done in an in-house role to benefit a site?
I would say the most successful thing that I've done, and I mentioned this before, is democratizing SEO. No really successful organization can continue increasing its headcount in perpetuity. You have to figure out a way that you can not have to necessarily grow your SEO team while growing the SEO understanding of your organization. So, when you educate your developers on proper markup and, what is an acceptable page load speed and what is an acceptable time to first byte and those types of things, it stops being something you have to monitor actively, and maybe you can switch to a quarterly technical audit of your site instead. Mm-hmm. When your content writers understand that you don't have to stuff keywords into the titles, that you can actually build titles that have keywords in them that are actually relevant to folks that are doing the searches, you don't have to continually monitor that, and you can do, weekly, biweekly, monthly type of content audit of the site just to make sure that everybody's on track. I would say the most successful thing that I've done is educating folks about SEO in general and let them know that it's not magic, what we do. It's a mixture of art and science, but it's not magic.
Right. Very good. Let me go back to when we were talking about the question box or answer box. I can't talk today.
Sure.
I haven't seen very many tests done, and I know Eric had done one from Stone Temple about what is the click-through rate on those? they're getting their answer, do they really go? What is the percentage of them actually going into the site further?
Yeah, this is one of the drawbacks of not working at SEOClarity anymore, because we had so much data back at SEOClarity. We could actually give you the answer for that. Back last year when I think you and I talked, we were seeing click-through rates for answer box results between 15 and 30%. And people certainly, 15, they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. That's on par with the number one result, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And then they say 30%, and they're like, oh, I want 30% click-through rate. And of course you do. But then again, the question becomes, this is an informational query, oftentimes. Is this going to convert, and does it really matter that you get 30% click-through rate if you get, basically an exit rate of, 90-something% after they get all the information that they need? So again, it's all about building that search experience so that you're encouraging folks to actually convert. You're targeting keywords that you feel like are meaningful to folks who are actually looking for your product. Right. It's you have to be very specific about how you're targeting keywords, and it becomes quite an unwieldy beast to manage the larger the site that you're working on. And the more people who have their hands in the pot, you get a lot of stakeholders who are like, I want a lot of traffic, and you look at their product or their service and you're like, this is a really niche product. This is really niche. You're going to get maybe 100 people per month that are going to come to your pages. But the good thing is you're working with a large enterprise. If you're dealing with Dell servers or anything like that, or IBM, you're dealing with one of their platforms. A conversion is a lot. So if you get, 2 conversions per month for a $100 million product or service, it's not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we got some questions coming in from Twitter.
Yeah, I was looking at Twitter. So Casey decided to pop in and say, hey, the answer box can be between 15 and 30% CTR, just so you know. And he was also asking, how about tools? What are some of your keyword mapping tools that you recommend? Some of the other really good tools for enterprise SEO?
Well, I can't give away my secret sauce, but I think we've already mentioned some of the tools that are really, really good, and a lot of SEOs have already talked about these tools in the past. SpareFoot and SEMrush, and even just doing the really annoying Google keyword planner, where they give you just a horrible range of 0 to 20,000 people search for this per month. I've never seen a range that bad before, but they are messing with us, and I do resent them for it. I don't necessarily want to act like I'm plugging SEOClarity, but they had a really good keyword research platform that kept month by month traffic numbers for years. And they also have a really nice competitor keyword tool as well. And so I would say, SEOClarity has some good stuff. A lot of the platforms out there have that type of system, though. So I definitely encourage you to figure out which one works best for you. Call these companies and ask for a demo. I'm sure they're happy to give it to you. And I would say you have to choose the tool that's right for your team to work with.
Sure.
I don't want someone to go and get a platform that nobody uses because it's too complicated or it doesn't quite work with what they're looking for. Then they're going to think I'm a really bad guest for your show. So
we have another question from Jesse McDonald. He says, how important is link building to a corporate SEO campaign, and what are the differences in strategies for small to medium businesses?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's a really great question, Jesse. I am a huge fan of saying that links are earned, and that you should be quite cautious about going out and actually trying to unnaturally manipulate your link, your backlink profile. This becomes even more important the larger the organization you work with. Because you are dealing with a situation that if you are going out and doing some link building behaviors that Google is going to frown upon, you don't just influence a few pages. If you get the page or you get the site de-indexed, for that matter, you could affect hundreds of jobs, thousands of jobs. So this is where working in a large enterprise organization, it becomes really important to understand the scope of your impact as well. If I make, any company that I worked with in the past, if I've made them $10 million additional dollars per year, these are jobs that people can have. One executive or 100 employees. I'm just kidding. But if I lose them that same amount of money, those are people. Those are real people with mortgages and kids that I'm negatively impacting because I have participated in something that is a natural and black hat, which is why I'm glad, Robert, you at the top of the hour, you said, we're not going to give you any black hat information here because we don't want you to have any negative impacts.
Yeah, I mean, that would be defeating the purpose of this show because we're out to help people, not to hurt them,
Yep, absolutely. And the impact of my actions are definitely bigger. So I will say this, though. Working for large organizations, they generally have very active PR and marketing teams. And they already have these industry contacts that you can work with them on to reach out to and say, hey, we noticed you talked about our product, but you didn't provide a link. Or, we'd love to have you take a look at this new service and tell us what you think in your blog. So these are things that, certainly they're more willing to do. And these relationships may have already been established with your PR and your marketing teams. In fact, if you try to reach out to these people without going through PR and marketing, you might find yourself slapped on the wrist and go, don't contact our people without coming through us first. But that said, this is certainly an option. And just keep in mind, links are earned, and that shouldn't really be any different for a tiny site or a large site.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine the consequences for something like IBM or something. It would just be mind-boggling.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so there is a great deal of responsibility in working for a large organization, especially when a large portion of traffic or purchases are coming from online. Organic is still very important in the world out there. I will say this, for any sized organization, don't just look at SEO as the only leg of your stool. If you are sitting on a one-legged stool, you will fall over. So make sure you are diversifying your outreach efforts and not just focusing on organic, but make sure you have a good paid program. Make sure you're, if it's appropriate for your industry, that you're out in traditional media, that you've got a good sales team in place that are doing the outreach efforts. Increase the number of legs on your stool, and it's bound to be more stable, to say the least.
Yeah. And Keith, on a site like that, on with IBM, do you guys do anything like conversion optimization, or is that anything along those lines?
Oh, it's an ongoing thing. Yeah, absolutely. Conversion optimization tells us whether or not we're directing the right people to our site, but also whether or not we're being honest to the people when they land on our pages, and driving them to a successful completion of the transaction. Conversion optimization is certainly it's certainly a separate discipline from SEO, but it's definitely integrated as well. It's certainly something we should be focused on. Paid, it's not something that just paid folks need to look at. It's something that SEO folks need to look at. Design is very important, and it all starts with choosing the right keywords, for one. Right. Building excellent content, and making sure your design is encouraging of a conversion of some sort. Also, make sure you have a great product or service. This goes back to the links. I always say this: if you want links, be link worthy. Have a product or service that's worthy of a link. Mm-hmm. I hate when and there's still people who do this. We'll get into the internet and they'll say, "I want to do this internet thing." All right, well, what are you offering? And they're like, "I don't know, but I want to be successful." All right, well, have something worthy of the conversion.
We're not worthy. Sorry, that just popped in my head when you said that. I was like...
Oh, Garth.
Michelle, got any more questions on Twitter?
Nothing coming through from Twitter, but if we've got time, I do have one more question.
Okay.
So just generally speaking, what is it about enterprise SEO that you consistently find the agency folks don't quite understand? They can't quite wrap their brain around it. Where is there a disconnect that happens between agency and enterprise?
Good question.
Excellent question. I can say it really does depend on the agency itself. I've worked with certain organizations where the SEO agency that we're working with is just incredible, absolutely incredible. I can't do anything but sing their praises because they're just awesome. However, I have worked with some organizations where the SEO agency might still be promoting behaviors that are less than acceptable, and it's really kind of a sad thing when you've got an agency that's saying to do a specific practice that everyone in-house who should be sort of insulated from the outside world knows about more before they do. So there's been nothing consistent in that respect. I will say, however, that agencies should always do a better job of providing an outlook on what is the ROI for their service. What are they bringing to the table ultimately? And, setting that as a goal for themselves. Like, hey, thanks for hiring us. Once you onboard an agency, and it is a long process, it's a long process for onboarding any tools as well. I mean, it could take anywhere from, 2 months to 8 months to get an agency or a tool in place in some of these organizations. And, once that's in place, it can happen that the agency becomes lax and they stop understanding that they have to continually prove their value and say, all right, this is what we brought to you. This is how we served you in our capacity as your SEO agency doing grunt work or strategic work, whatever we're doing. So, like I said, it's fairly rare nowadays. I think in the old days it was a lot more prominent. I do still see some paid agencies that are really bad about sort of not embracing their mistakes and correcting them and continuing to be involved in, buying keywords or broad matching keywords badly and, just not changing it because they have a budget and they want to spend it all and because that's how they're paid.
Keith, I hate to cut you off. I'm running out of time here. We got literally 3 minutes to wrap it up. I want to thank you for being on the show and, and passing your knowledge as a enterprise SEO manager with IBM. And Michelle, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It's been great. And thank you for your help. Let's see, what else? Do you have anything else you want to end off with, Keith?
Oh, no, just, if you want to reach out to me and contact me directly, I'm at Keith Goode on Twitter. Or you can see me at some of the conferences. I was at Pubcon SFEMA earlier last month, and I will be at Pubcon Vegas this year and probably something in between, but I'm not sure yet.
Keith, by the way, your presentation was awesome. I was there, so I just want to give you kudos.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. That's available on my SlideShare. So if you happen to follow me on Twitter, I have a link to it at the top of my page if you want to see it. But thank you for the compliment.
Yes. Michelle? Any last words?
This has been a blast. This has been way too much fun.
Let's geek out for an hour. All right. Well, thank you very much for both of you. I'll contact you after the show. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. We are back next Tuesday. We are back every Tuesday from 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can go to searchtalklive.com and sign up for the newsletter or listen to previous shows. You can also follow us on Twitter at SearchTalkLive. Be sure, if you have any interest in being a guest on the show, please contact me by email, robert@searchtalklive.com. And I want to thank everybody for your support. How much time we got? 1 minute. Okay. Shoot me an email if you're interested in being a guest on the show. We are booked up until June right now. And I want to thank Michelle for coming on and co-hosting the show with me. I think that's it. We will see you next week. Please tune in. We have, let's see who our guest is real quick. Hold on. I had that ready and I lost it. Mike Moran. He's coming on the show. So tune in and we'll see you next week. Thanks for your support. Bye-bye.
Search Talk Live is a presentation of the Robert Palmer family of companies.